Okay, good afternoon or good evening, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. My name is Dr. Tomisha Price-Brock, and I'm your facilitator today. I'm a music educator with 16 years of experience. I've taught 8 years on the K-12 level and 8 years in higher ed. Currently, I'm the Director of Bands at Basic Academy of International Studies in Henderson, Nevada, and I'm also the owner and professional development specialist of Prodigious Music Concepts here in Las Vegas, Nevada. The purpose of today's webinar is to shed light on mental health, increasing awareness of mental health disorders, and addressing these disorders that are affecting our music majors, faculty, staff, and administrators nationwide. I'm truly honored to be joined for the second day in a row by some wonderful women. My guest panelists today are Dr. Lanisha Williams, LCPC, CEO of Dr. W Consultations, LLC, here in Nevada. Professor Troy Banks Smith, LCSW, owner of LSmith and Associates in Richmond, Virginia. Professor Stephanie Sanders, Assistant Professor of Music, Associate Director of Bands and Jazz Ensembles Director at Norfolk State University in Norfolk, Virginia. And Professor Roxanne Stevenson, Director of Bands, Music Education and Gospel Music Coordinator at Chicago State University in Chicago, Illinois. We will start with you, Dr. Williams. Could you briefly tell us a little about yourself?
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Dr. Lanisha Williams. I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor located in Nevada, originally from Chicago, Illinois. I've been working in behavioral health for 15 years, serving in various capacities, primarily leadership roles. I am currently the owner of my private practice, providing individual, couples, and family therapy. I am also a contract therapist and consultant at 2 mental health agencies here in Nevada, and I am in the process of launching a consultation group for professionals in the field of mental health.
Thank you. Professor Smith, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, right now I'm a clinical director for a small mental health agency, and I have counselors, and we deal with individuals who have been diagnosed with schizophrenia, bipolar 1, bipolar 2, or major depressive disorder. I also have outpatient therapy where I see people as young as 5 all the way up. I don't know if I have a cap or run across a cap yet. Just about my background, I've worked with individuals with HIV testing and counseling. I've had a group home working with foster care youth. So just to give you, just those different fields of the profession that I've touched on.
Thank you. Professor Stevenson, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
All right, I am Roxanne Stevenson. I'm a full professor at Chicago State University. I'm the director of bands. I have taught for 38 or so years. I believe this is my 38th year and my 29th year at the university. I've taught every grade level from preschool through retired people. I've taught 5th through 8th grade math, 7th to 8th grade reading, English, choir, band, orchestra, you name it. But my main responsibility at Chicago State is as director of bands, and I'm over music education. I'm in charge of the student teachers and the gospel music concentration, which is our newest endeavor at Chicago State. That's it.
Thank you. And Professor Sanders, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, good evening. I've been teaching at Norfolk State University for 21 years. I've been teaching in education for 30 years. I've taught high school as well as college. And I also freelance, and I'm a musician. I do woodwinds with bassoon, saxophone, and flute. And that's about enough to know. Serve on many committees. Look.
Yes, so many. Indeed. Thank you, ladies. All right, let's get started. Our session today is interactive, so we definitely encourage our participants to be interactive in the chat. And depending on how many participants we have in the call today, we may even ask you to unmute your mics and participate that way as well. We do have a brief question and answer session that we'll have at the end of our presentation, and we'll make sure that we take the time to answer each of your questions. Now let's take a closer look at mental health. Think in terms of mental health and what that term means to you. When you think about stress, what is your definition? What is stress to you? Feel free to type your answers in the chat and we will acknowledge some of those answers, but just think about what stress means to you or what you feel stress is. And feel free to either interact in the chat, or I guess we have a manageable enough group where if you want to unmute yourself and tell us a little bit about how you feel or what you consider stress to be in, you know, as it relates to your life.
I guess I'll start. I'm Dr. Roderick Little, Service Director of Bands at Jackson State University, and I appreciate you, Dr. Brock, for spearheading such a seminar, simply because I see this as a reoccurring theme or something that's emerging. In the band culture, I mean, our students are really struggling. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic, they are really struggling with mental health. And so I really want to make sure that I have all of the tools necessary to make sure that our students are successful in that vein. Because even just last year, I'm sorry to kind of go off on a tangent, but just last year we had two students to want to commit suicide, and so that was definitely a red flag for me, because in our culture we don't really look at mental health. It's like, oh, you just kind of need to man up, or you need to woman up, and and just kind of shake it off. But I'm noticing that we can't do that anymore. We have to make sure that we look at this as a problem. So for me, I would say, just from the standpoint of our students, is having so much on their plate to where they cannot decipher what's priority, or they just can't see over it. It's just clouded. It's a cloudy sense of their vision or their lens. So they have to be a regular student, right? They have to go to class. They have to meet all the requirements of the band program. They have to make sure that they have everything in place. So when you and then they have to deal with what's going on at home. And so you have all of those variables kind of weighing down on the student or the psyche or the mind, it becomes quite cumbersome in regards to allowing them to see clearly. So that would be my definition, just of a myriad of things that bombards their mind to where they can't see clearly or know exactly what they need to be doing as students.
Thank you, Dr. Little. And anyone else, for those of you just joining us, we're just asking you to just reflect on what you think mental health means to you and what you feel your own personal definition of stress is. And if you would like to share what you feel your definition is, please feel free to unmute your mic. Okay, Dr. Williams, I'm going to ask if you could just give us, I guess from a clinical standpoint, what is the definition of mental health? And if you could just provide some insight on that for us.
Of course. So mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and our social well-being. It affects how we think, how we feel, how we act, how we handle stress, and how we relate to others. Additionally, it affects how we make choices in our daily lives as well. So it's important, mental health is important at every stage of our life, childhood, adolescence, through adulthood. And over the course of your life, you will experience mental health problems. Your thinking, your mood, your behavior can all be affected, and many factors contribute to your mental health. Biological factors, life experiences, and also family history are things to include when you consider mental health.
Thank you. Professor Smith, what are some common mental health disorders that we might be familiar with but may not associate them as being mental health disorders or ailments?
Well, there's a bunch out there, but what comes to mind is like PTSD. I think particularly in the African American community, some people are raised in a neighborhood that has so much violence, they don't even, it's just second nature. And Dr. Little was trying to steal my whole presentation when he was talking about how we're in several of our communities, we don't have the resources to even do anything about it. So we just try to, ignore it, shake it off, pray it off. And sometimes that's just not enough. But back to the disorders that you were talking about, anxiety, depression, and even adjustment disorder. Sometimes people have a hard time moving to a new place, or meeting new people, or leaving their resources when they're going to college. So there's several different things that can come up for individuals, and it's not so easy to just shake off. And one more, grief. So when we talk about grief in the traditional sense, people think about death. And that is valid. However, you have to think about the grief of a loss of a job, a loss of a relationship. When I was running my group home, my young ladies were in foster care, age 16 to 21. I didn't grow up with social media. So I was used to somebody sitting on the porch and, you know, everybody's coming by watching him trying to hold your hand. So it took a while for them to court you. But my ladies, we had to go back to dating. What is dating? Because you've just been on Facebook for 3 months. You really don't know this person. So I just see some young people that are struggling with relationships because the definitions are different in the age of social media.
Right. Thank you so much. And adjustment disorder, definitely something that, you know, even for me, that's something that you've taught me something just thinking about, you know, my career and thinking about how it affected my daughter sometimes being adjusting to new situations and new surroundings and the type of stress it put on her, you know, to adjust to new schools and things like that. So I wouldn't have considered that before. So definitely opened my eyes right there as well. As I stated before, the purpose of this webinar is to increase awareness of mental health struggles and the understanding that mental health disorders are actually treatable. Dr. Williams, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes, I can. You know, there is a stigma associated with mental health. There is also a misconception that mental health looks like psychosis all the time. You're crazy, or that they're afraid to talk about mental health. But mental health can look like, as Professor Smith stated, that, you know, it can be anxiety, adjustment disorder, depression, and even insomnia. Those are also mental health disorders or conditions or things that impact you mentally or emotionally. And so, you know, there are, you know, there's help, it can be treatable, and you also have to take a multidisciplinary approach, meaning that, you know, seeing a therapist, you could see a psychiatrist if meds are needed, a psychologist if you need any psychological testing, and also your medical providers as well play a part in your mental health treatment. A lot of the times, you know, you have physical symptoms that you're experiencing and you think it's immediately related to something medical, but it could actually be stress, or you may be having a panic attack that is similar to has some similar symptoms to thinking you're having a heart attack. So, yeah.
Thank you. While there are a number of mental health disorders, as Professor Smith stated, our webinar today will focus on stress, anxiety, depression, secondary traumatic stress disorder, and sleep disorders, as Dr. Williams mentioned, insomnia. Although we will present content geared towards college music majors and music faculty, the information we will share today will benefit students and faculty from all disciplines and educational levels. Let's take a look first at music majors. It has been found that the traditional college ages of 18 to 25 are when mental health problems start to appear in a lot of people. Recent studies have indicated that about 35% of our students are dealing with some form of stress, anxiety, depression, or some form of mental health problem as they matriculate through their degree program. When we think about our experiences at our institutions, Professor Sanders, what are some things that you have experienced or noticed with your students?
Some of the things that I've noticed with my students, they get depressed for not passing the Praxis exam. Students avoid taking the tests, or they try to consult each other and they get no outcome. You have students think their major is cookie cut versus just say like for a biology or chemistry major where they can get out in 4 years, when as stated Wednesday, you eloquently said, Dr. Brock, that music majors are the only major that you have to have a prerequisite before coming to college. You have to have some sense of playing before coming in. You can choose to be a biology major when you get there. You can choose to be a criminal justice major when you get to school. So they have this problem with not getting out, or not getting out with their peers and graduating. You have students who just don't take their major seriously. And meaning that you have to have a passion for whatever your major is. And especially with music, you've got to eat, sleep, breathe, know that history, know that music lit. You know, I know it's kind of cumbersome sometimes, but you have to get into that as well as that theory, as well as your apply. Some students have never really practiced or even performed by themselves or with an accompanist. Some students have never taken lessons prior to. And then I have some students who just refuse to ask questions. They just go through and never take charge of anything and just going day by day without asking any professors for, you know, or any kind of administrators for any kind of assistance with anything. And it's not just for academics, it's really, it can be personal. We have students who have found that we've had to house. We've had 2 students who were living out of their cars, who we've had to, you know, so that amount of stress is enough as it is to go to class. And I don't even know how they did it so far, but just, you know, just couldn't take it anymore. So you have kids who have, you know, different types of problems, family problems. I have a student that's in the jazz ensemble who is the sole breadwinner of his family because both of his parents were laid off because of the closing of the businesses of their for their parents. So you just have different factors, but those are the main ones that I usually that I've been dealing with since the beginning of this pandemic.
Thank you so much. And that is so profound, you know, definitely talking about, you know, students who have these compound issues and, you know, like living out of their cars and things like that, or housing students a lot of times. I know, you know, I've had to house students as well before and make sure they ate and make sure they got to work and things like that. And that can add stress. Professor Stevenson, what about you? What are some things you've experienced or noticed with your students?
So because we are primarily a non-traditional institution and we're not an HBCU, but we are predominantly Black and about 153 years old, but our dormitory wasn't built until like 1998. So, and full capacity is 350 people. So our students come with a myriad of problems. Often they are return students, and the majority of our students have come back from other schools or HBCUs, and they may still be first generation students, but they usually come back with serious financial situations where things didn't work out at another school and they have financial issues. They went to college, they thought they were going to get this as a scholarship and they didn't get what they thought, and now they have a balance that they're not able to pay. One of the issues is they go away and they end up with these balances, and now they can't transfer into another school until they pay off the other school. And then they go, and sometimes they've spent a lot of time with the extracurricular and the co-curricular and not enough academic time. And when they do that, often you'll find that the students will come, and now I can't even get them into school because they don't have the grade point average to get in. And many of the students can't come straight to Chicago State. They have to transfer in due to the ACT testing because we did not have open enrollment. So we see that many of the students come back because of financial situations, family drama, different kinds of traumas that they experience away from home. One of the main problems that I see is the hazing for being in so many ensembles or marching band. And then they come back really scarred and sometimes really angry. So many of the students, this is their first time away from home, and they start self-medicating. As you know, we won't say what that really is, but they self-medicate and different things to try to cope. But often students will find a family with the marching band. Let's just say marching band, because now you're at school first, you meet people, and you're there a couple of weeks before school starts and everything. And then if you don't work out, or you're not the kind of person they want you to be or whatever, and then you're no longer part of that ensemble, then you're kind of ostracized. So a lot of students start dealing with isolation and that stress of you were in this band, but now you're not in this band. Now you've lost all your friends because they're all gone to band rehearsal, or now they've all gone to a game and now you're always alone. So, you know, that's the kind of thing that I see that causes so much stress and anxiety in young students going away to school and just having now a new family, and it's like being excommunicated. we talked, Stephanie was also talking about students having to try to have so many credit hours. I think we talked about that the other day. And I know I was saying that it's more to just that you have to have 128 credit hours at our school to graduate with music ed, but only 120 in criminal justice. But the other side of it is in criminal justice, those 120 credit hours are only 40 classes. But for us, the 128 hours is 66 classes. So you might say, well, that class is only worth 2 credit hours, but there's so much content that you have to get. So after you've done all of this, put all of the time in, and then at the end, you have these high stakes tests. You know, for you all, it's the Praxis. And I told the ladies the other day that we challenged that in the state of Illinois because we were finding it unfair with especially not the music part of the exam, but what they call basic skills that was no longer basic, because it said it had to be 22 on the ACT was the equivalent. But when they really factored things in, it was a 26 in order to pass the TAP test. So we were able to get them to get rid of the test. So I was talking to y'all before, and I don't know the people who are on there now, challenge in your state, challenge the validity of the Praxis, because there's no data that says that a high ACT score makes a better teacher. There's no data that says that you passed the Praxis and with the highest score and now you're a better teacher. So anyway, so that for me adds to the stress for students. No.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Professor Sanders.
Yeah, I wanted to piggyback off of what Professor Stevenson has said. In the state of Virginia, we have the highest scores in the country for the Praxis. So that's why we have a big challenge with student passing. When the average student comes in with an average score of 17 or 18, maybe 21. So, and we're not open enrollment anymore. So it creates a big problem coming in, and then also with retention and keeping them in.
Indeed, indeed. And then looking at the Praxis too, I remember teaching in the state of Mississippi when I was at Mississippi Valley State University. One year, the passing score on the Praxis 2 was a 138. The very next year, it jumped almost 20 points to 161. And then you're talking about there was no grandfather clause to grandfather those students in. It was either get it now or change your major or sit here for another 2, 3, 4, 5 years because you won't take your upper level classes or you won't student teach, until you pass these requirements. So definitely that level of stress can definitely mount up. And participants, if you're on the call, feel free to post any of your comments or any of your questions in the chat as we're going. We want to make sure we include you in this conversation as well. Feel free to use the raise your hand button if you would like to chime in at any time as well. Now, I would like for us to look at some of the factors that may influence mental health disorders in our students. Think about the student, like many have said, that is a first-generation college student, or the student who is away from home and totally independent for the first time in their lives. Professor Sanders, Professor Sanders, excuse me. Think about, I know you mentioned a little bit earlier, and you mentioned also on Wednesday about students that are on campus. What are some factors that you feel, in addition to what we've just talked about, that may influence stress in our students?
I was thinking a lot, we have a lot of students when we talk about the first generation students. We have, I think it's a wonderful experience for students to be a first generation student, but when you don't have parents, whether you have the education or not, to actually emotionally and financially back them, that creates a challenge for them being in school. Also being homesick. You have students who have never been away from home at all. You have adapting to college life. It's a difference when you have to share things with other students versus being spoiled of either or having a roommate or a sister or brother. You got 32 other girls or guys that you have to share things with. Never being out on their own at all. We have children who, parents who have helicoptered, them, and they're so spoiled. Like you have, from one spectrum, you have parents that say, I will never have my child suffer as bad as I've had to suffer. So they've done and have counted for everything that they had to do for their child, and now they have to fend for themselves and they have no coping skills. And then you just have some on the other end, thank God by Norfolk State, that you have to sign with the admissions department. We cannot discuss any financial aid or any grades for the students, but you got parents who will come. I came from that household where, you know, if something that had, you know, my institution on there, my mother knew all the news. But now you have kids that, you know, the parents don't know anything. And then you just have some relationship challenges. We talked about this on Wednesday. Students can't become friendly if they can't be a friend to themselves. And a lot of students don't love themselves. So when you have a lot of emotional challenges with just loving themselves, they have interpersonal skills, you know, they just have challenges with having to be with others. I think the band helps out a lot, but then on the other end spectrum, you know, they get ostracized to be in a particular section, to be in the band, and it just creates a problem. So if you are a certain type of student and if you don't fit into a particular mold, that creates a problem to be ostracized either by your section or by the band.
Indeed, that is so profound. I know one thing that I'm so grateful for, and I think I was just a bold person that was going to go against the grain anyway. But when I was in undergrad, I didn't feel I needed, you know, we didn't have pledge in the sections a lot or things like that. But even with that, I didn't feel I needed to do that because I felt my audition was enough to certify my skills and my qualifications for that ensemble, let alone, you know, I was a music major as well. So it's nothing that pledging this or pledging that is going to do, you know, to finance my education or make me a better clarinet player, you know. And I think sometimes, you know, it's all great to have camaraderie, it's all great to have school pride and pride in your section, but at the same time, is that whiffing factor. What's in it for me? What's the real takeaway from this? And what type of additional stress or what triggers am I stepping on that's going to cause someone emotional grief, backgrounds? You never know if someone came from an abusive home. You never know if someone came from, they were deprived either financially, they were deprived nutritionally, and, you know, to have them things mimicked or mirrored, you know, in a program or in a department is not something that is conducive to their health or conducive to the learning environment either. Professor Smith, what are some factors that we may not have considered with our students when we talk about stress and things that may trigger stress?
Factors that are not considered. As you guys are talking, I just I was in the band. I wasn't a music major, and we just had homecoming, so I have a long-standing relationship with some of those band members. But as you get older and people feel more comfortable, you realize people were hanging on by a string. You know, staying with other people, trying to figure out where the money was going to come from. When people are leaving band practice on a dinner break to go get something to eat, some people didn't have the money, you know, for it. So just all those pressures of trying to fit in and not look like you're begging, but, you know, be a part of. Also, when you're thinking about just the requirements, you know, just the money being put out. You know, you don't want to let the band down. So I'm not saying it's anything as direct as hazing, but just try not to let your bandmates down. I remember I could only march 1 year because I was the oldest of 6 children. I needed to help my mother out with the children behind me. And I still to this day remember the disappointment when I had to tell them I wasn't coming back to the marching band. You know, and years later, I knew where I was in the parking lot and how that felt. So I think the other piece, you guys, is African American, you know, well, predominantly African Americans, just knowing the difference between giving a hand out and a hand up, you know, because sometimes it's like a hookup mentality, and you know the difference in your students. There's some that you can see them trying and giving it all, and then there's some that is more manipulative. So you know, just knowing the difference, that whole spirit. I know that's one thing that I went to a HBCU for, is that family-like experience. That my grandmother's 1 of 14. She just barged in on me during the webinar. And then my grandfather's 1 of 20. And when the younger ones came out of the country, they didn't go stay with people. They stayed with their family members and lived in the basements in DC while they went to Howard, or, you know, or somebody's coming down to Virginia State. You house one another. You made sure they had food and stuff like that. So, you know, just that spirit of camaraderie and banding together and noticing if somebody is not, you know, falling outside of that fold. So really, it's a whole bunch of different factors that could come up. But just as we were talking on the last webinar about, you know, the baselines of people, you know, when someone's their energy is very high and all of a sudden for a couple of weeks has been very low. You know, when one of your students is hanging around with a crowd that's not their crew. So why are you hanging with them? So, you know, again, you have those skills. That's not something that Dr. Williams and I are the only ones that can kind of pick up on. On the last webinar, I was saying, you know, when how your child or your mate texts you. So just the differences in the text, you know, you don't round your sentences off like that. It's the same thing with your students. So that's it, the subtle differences.
Thank you so much. That was so profound. Think about, you know, for all of us on the call, think about either when you were in school, if you were a music major, or even in your degree programs, and then for professors especially, when we think about the rigors of our degree programs, here are some things we need to consider for our music majors and the level of stress they may be encountering. Prerequisites and deficiencies. We don't often take into account that our students are coming into our programs and they're not adequately prepared. They're coming in and they may have never taken theory in high school. They may have had a revolving door of band directors or music teachers, or they may not have had any music program their junior and senior year because of right sizing of the school or defunding of the program. And yet we're asking them to come in and be prepared to take a placement test in theory or history, or be prepared for theory 1 or upper level classes. Just understanding that those level of deficiencies and the disadvantage they feel compared to some of the other music majors in those same classes may evoke stress. The number of courses and credits, Professor Stevenson talked about this. We take a lot of 1-credit classes as music majors, and whereas, you know, I guess there's a rule or a ratio equation for so many hours of homework for however many credit hours you are taking. When you equate that to a music major, our music majors are working full-time jobs, 40 hours a week to be a music major. And that can add stress in itself, especially when you're doing all this work for a 1-credit class and then it's still not good enough. You still have to do a recital. You still have to do a jury. You have a 3.5 GPA, but you still have to pass the test to be certified to teach. You know, so that can be very stressful. Difficulty with classes. I know we're going to talk about it later with like learning disorders and things like that, but we have to understand too that if a student was dyslexic in high school, 9 times out of 10, they're still dyslexic when they come to college. If a student had ADHD in high school, they still have ADHD when they come to college. So they may have difficulty with classes, not being prepared for class, not having good time management, not grasping the concept of the content. And that's not only because cognitively they're struggling with it, but it could also factor into how we as professors are delivering the content. We may not be differentiating the content in a way that appeals to all learners. We may be stuck in 1920 and 1930s habits trying to teach a digital age. I used the analogy the other on Wednesday that you can't teach a Wi-Fi generation with dial-up concepts. So you have to make sure that we are adapting to the times, that we are those lifelong learners that our teachers keep saying we're promoting education. I can't tell you the endless times I've heard that going through school. You're a lifelong learner. We have to practice what we preach. We have to be willing to learn and adapt as well to our students and understand that we can also learn from our students. But just that difficulty with class can create stress in itself, and it prompts students to not want to go to class. If I'm sitting here failing no matter what I do, why am I wasting my time going to your class? That's, you know, it's a bad mentality to have, but this is the reality of some of our students. Competitiveness and pressures. We talked about music being the only major at any university where you have to come in with prior knowledge and prerequisites. You have to come in with job experience for an entry-level position already. And with that, we're always competitive. You have to compete to get into the program. You have to compete for a scholarship. You have to compete for first chair. You have to compete for section leader. You have to compete to get access to a practice room. You know, you have to compete for a job when you get out. So a lot of times, you know, this competitiveness and this pressure and this sense of always having to be perfect can create insurmountable, you know, just stress upon our students. Think about it, you know, music professors, we want our students to play these pieces for recital near perfection, or we don't sign off on that jury form. And sometimes that I have to be perfect. Imagine the type of stress of that saxophone player that's in the practice room and banging their head up against the wall because they missed that same run over and over again. And that pressure can lead to added stress when they have stage fright, okay? And we just have to account for that type of thing. And then finally, program completion requirements, licensure tests, and student teaching. The stresses of this alone may attribute to burnout. And these students, again, burn out before they even get into the profession. So let alone those that skate by and actually make it into the profession, they're already burnt out before that. If you make it past 3 years, then you're going to survive in the field. They're already burnt out before we say go. And then, of course, you know, it attributes to students changing their major. It attributes to our graduation rate as well. And all of this is without, you know, going to rehearsals and things like that. On top of all of this, like Professor Stevenson said, you know, we still have programs that, for whatever reason, or just scheduling purposes, they're still rehearsing 10, 11 o'clock at night, 1 a.m. in the morning for what? You know, I mean, I understand. I think we need to change our thinking, change our mentality. I just think just like you plan your lessons for your music history class and your music theory class, we need to have a lesson plan for our rehearsals. I think if you go on with the plan, and one thing I know when I took a class at UNC Greensboro, Professor John Locke used to have a page on the door every rehearsal. We already knew what songs were going to be worked on, what measures were going to be worked on, what the goal and target was for the day. And by doing that, the students were already prepared for the downbeat at the start of the clock. They knew what we were working on, and we stuck to the plan. And when that was accomplished, rehearsal was over. But then also changing the mentality, and this is off the subject of stress, but it may help to reduce stress, having our students understand that rehearsal is to fine tune, and practice is what's done outside of rehearsal. Practice is what's done in the practice room. Practice is what's done in sectionals. You shouldn't spend rehearsal time teaching parts and going over fingerings and rhythms. That should have been worked out in the practice room. That should have been worked out in sectionals. It should have been worked out in applied lessons if you're a music major. The rehearsal time is to bring all the pieces of the puzzle together, sand it over, and put gloss on it. So that, you know, those are some things that we need to consider. And then, of course, the stress of finding the job. Finding a job is so stressful now, not just for our students, but for our faculty too. And keeping a job, that may add, you know, extra stress. Dr. Williams, when we're talking about triggers, we're talking about these factors that influence stress, what are some things that we can look for or listen for in our students to help identify stress or when someone is at the breaking point?
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna have to piggyback off of Professor Smith when she said, you know your students, and it's basically any changes in behavior. Are they giving you low energy when maybe they're always upbeat, or no energy? Having unexplained aches and pains, overly smoking, drinking, or using drugs. More than normal, feeling confused, forgetful, on edge, angry, if they're yelling at their friends, family members. These are all indications that they could be experiencing some type of stress in their lives.
Thank you. And I remember Wednesday, you also mentioned too, eating habits or eating change, like not eating enough or eating too much may also be a trigger or indicator as well. I'm thinking, I see we have a question in the chat, and of course we'll elaborate on it later, but it's important to plug in now. Do you see ways that high schools, knowing all the challenges of K-12 education systems, can better help prepare students for the rigors of higher education, especially in regards to preparing music education majors? I definitely definitely feel communication is the key. And I feel across the board, no matter what type of institution we have, it is important for our professors and administrators to communicate early and often, and not just assume that our students are going to find this information on our website, because truth be told, I've searched a lot of our college websites and they're not user friendly. So it's hard, or imagine a student who knows nothing about our institutions trying to find information about our degree programs. So I feel that a part of the recruitment process, the responsibility is that in addition to physically visiting or virtually visiting these schools, that our professors, our ensemble directors, and our department chairs need to be clear and concise about what the requirements are to get into your program. But don't stop there. Tell them what the requirements are to get out of the program, because you can get anyone in, but if you don't tell them what it requires to keep them there and to graduate them, then you're wasting their time and their money. So we need to have earlier conversations. We need to communicate early and often about what our requirements are, what the audition requirements are. Make it public knowledge. It's not privileged information to audition for your programs. You should want people to audition, and you should want people to be as prepared as possible. That way you're getting the best prepared student, or the student at their optimum best. You don't ever want to preset or predestine a student for failure because you wanted them to guess what it was you wanted. So it's just like asking someone what they want to eat and then being upset because they don't eat what you bought them. You know, you just got to make sure that, you know, that we're communicating. And then high school directors, or even middle school directors, we need to always prepare our students as if they're going to be music majors later on. If that is our area, that is our craft, whether they choose to go into music or mechanical engineering, we should be preparing and imparting as much knowledge in our students to be the best they can be and the most prepared they can be. Give them a well-rounded, holistic approach to music education. Don't be afraid to incorporate music theory. Don't be afraid to incorporate music fundamentals and history into your music ensemble rehearsals as well. So that's just, you know, just to answer that question, just off top. Professor Sanders.
What I've done this semester with about 5 high schools in the South, actually this semester, what some of the high school directors have done have reached out to their constituents, and once a week they have 1 hour to have a private lesson, and they put them in the group pages off of Zoom, and you just break off sessions and you just have an hour with someone to work on various things just to keep the technique up. And then you just have to inspire these kids, because these kids are having stresses of their own, but and give them a little time to talk about things outside of school as well. But the main focus is to prepare them for school. Don't lie and just say, oh, you know, I've had some colleagues that will say, oh, you just need four scales to go to school. No, you don't. You need to know all your major scales, the chromatic scale. You need to have some etudes. Do you have any etude books? You know, I don't need to see your second clarinet part from you and your marching band and thinking that you're going to get a full ride to come to school. You know, so, you know, don't sugarcoat things for the kids, and tell them, and especially if they're going to be music majors, you're exactly right, Dr. Brock, tell them exactly what they're going to encounter, especially their freshman year, because a lot of kids were shocked. Yes, you have to take a music exam once you get in. So we need to find out if you're going to be in freshman theory or you need to be in this developmental class. Some of these kids have never sung in their life, less enough to do sight singing class. And then, Lord have mercy, that we talk about music history and music lit, they go cuckoo crazy. You got computer literacy. They don't know how to use Finale, Sibelius, you know, Lord, they're using a cheat route of MuseScore, and just other factors, you know, other programs that they're using, you know, but they don't introduce these things to these students. So they are just blinded when they come to school, or thinking that it's going to be a certain way. Also, just say, for example, if they emulate their particular town's university that's near them, they think that it's the glamorous life of what they see from the outside, but they don't realize about the rigorous hours that you're going to have to practice. You're going to have to march, you know, you're going to have to exercise now. It missed COVID. You're going to have to exercise. You're going to have to play your instrument, you know, and all of these rigors. In fact, you know, and then, we still have band practice. Oh yes, and yes, we're going to grade you on what you need to play, and you need to have it recorded. It needs to be metronomic marker 146. You know, you just have to have those factors and give them the truth. So when they come in, and I know I have to commend all middle school and high school music educators everywhere, because I know I've had, especially in this area, the kids haven't been in class at all. So you're having, and then how are you going to teach a beginning band program when students don't even have an instrument in front of them? So you have to think of inquisitive ways of thinking and just keeping the mind stimulated, you know, until we get to this next level. And truth be told, I don't know about your area of the country, but our numbers are going up. And so I know that we are probably still going to be, the public schools are still going to be, you know, online. So it's going to be a great challenge. And for the college directors out there, yeah, it's a challenge, because if you got kids, you got some kids who have been 1 year or 2 years that they have not been on their instrument, if you think about it, that are coming in the next year, you know, for recruitment purposes. So if they don't have that structuring, you know, factor coming in, it's almost like starting school, you know, starting and playing their instrument all over again.
Indeed. Thank you. Professor Smith, did you want to add something?
Well, I was just going to say access to people who have gone through the field. I was blessed to be in the backyard of Virginia State, so we were seeing music majors all the time. But still, my feelings were hurt when I transitioned into Virginia State Marching Band. I thought I was the stuff in high school, but when I went on that level, you know, I was dismayed. One of my clarinet sisters is on this call, and we were just talking about how we were devastated, because in high school we were all of that, and thrown into Virginia State, we found out, oh, we don't know half of what we thought we knew. So I think outside of even music majors, I found myself in front of students that didn't have any kind of concept of what a social worker does or a psychologist does, or, you know, and if you think about it, there's some youth that are in neighborhoods, there are no professional people that are, you know, right there at their arm's length, reach.
Thank you. Yes, that's so profound, you know, just to be able to see that. And, you know, a lot of the techniques we're talking about today, this can generalize to all disciplines as far as getting out and getting out early. It's not just, you know, for athletics and music to go out and recruit for your universities and institutions. It is a total concept for all departments and all professors, because the more your students know, regardless if you're a criminal justice major, social work, journalism major, the more we share with our feeder programs. And yes, the world is our playground when it comes to institutions. Every high school is our feeder program. I think the more information we get out there to them and get it out as early as 8th or 9th grade, the better prepared our students will be coming into college. And that just alleviates some of the stress. It gives them something to look forward to, as opposed to something they have to dig themselves out of or measure up to, so to say. But let's talk about now, we spend a lot of time talking about mental health issues with our students and how to identify triggers, but we also have to take into account that faculty, that we as teachers and professors are also experiencing mental health issues. And a lot of times we spend time, you know, assessing and dealing with our students' issues that we don't have anywhere to turn, or we're afraid to address or come to terms with our own issues. In a recent study from the UCL Institute of Education, it reports that 1 in every 20 teachers, about 5%, suffer from a mental illness that has lasted or is likely to last more than a year. Professor Smith, can you talk to us about some factors that may influence mental health disorders and burnout in the workplace?
Again, a myriad of factors, but I'm just trying to think of some that I hear about. Is that that adage to thine own self be true is it is true. Sometimes you'll find people that they might not be happy in a certain arena, but for whatever reason, responsibilities and bills, they don't tend to explore or reach out for themselves. And I just want us as adults to think about that, is that you're telling that child at home that they can be anything and everything they want to be, but oftentimes we're fraudulent because we're not doing that ourselves. So I just think it's you know, important for us to continue to grow. You can see people that get stifled if they're not growing as an individual, and sometimes, you know, that job is for a season. So that's one that I've run into. Another thing is, I might step on some toes, but the clash with administration is that sometimes that institution and your vision were aligned and it is not aligned anymore. And so I see people in denial about that. And then you can start to see the depressive factors come out because they're just not where they need to be. You know, to me, that's all about just taking inventory. You know, I think we all need to do it. Most of us will do it at the beginning of the year with those black eyed peas. But I think you need to, you know, do it a little bit more often just to make sure, you know, you're really walking in whatever your ministry is. Because I do believe we all have our own ministries, but we're not, you know, we're just not taking inventory and finding out what that is. And I, just food for thought. I worked with a woman one time, and she said she really loved her job, but I caught her looking at some ads for a new job. And so I was so confused because I was saying, I thought you said you love your job. She said, I do, but it's a 2-year rule. And I said, well, what is that? She said, in 2 years, if I'm not able to see myself moving up or, moving up professionally, then I'm moving out. And I'm not saying 2 years is the time frame for you guys, but I'm saying that taught me something is that oftentimes when I go into these, when I was working for other people, I would go into these interviews and they're like looking at me, and my credentials and who I am, to see if I was a good fit for that institution. But sometimes we need to flip it and see if that institution is a good fit for me, So just some things to think about. So I see oftentimes stressors, because people just haven't taken their inventory because that relationship, that job placement, where they are in life they're not in alignment with it anymore. And, they might be in denial or, it's time for them to take inventory so they can make their moves.
Thank you so much. Dr. Williams, would you like to add to that in any way about just things that may factor in or cause stress for faculty that may factor into burnout in the workplace?
I'm just gonna have to agree with Professor Smith and everything that she said. And again, understanding that when you're going into these job interviews, you are interviewing them as well. Any relationship, friendship, employment, it's a goodness of fit. Therapy, it's all a goodness of fit. So you have to make sure that it's the right fit for you. For faculty, I'm going to say it's the same as with your students, recognizing any changes in behavior. If you are experiencing some extremely high and low moods, long-lasting sadness or irritability, social withdrawal, excessive worry, fear and anxiety, those are all indicators that you might be having some issues with your mental health and seek out some professional help.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. A couple of things too. I think one thing that just came to mind with me, professors, I think a lot of the times when we are given these job descriptions or we're hired for these positions, a lot of the times we know what we're capable of doing, but if a university is trying to save money, they may partner many job descriptions or many qualifications into that one job description. It is okay to tell someone in an interview that you're not experienced in a particular area or that you don't feel comfortable in a particular area. For example, I'm not a jazz band person, so I would not go into a position and say, yeah, I can do jazz band. No, like who else do you have here that can teach jazz band? Because my expertise is symphonic band, wind ensemble, Methodist courses, woodwinds, marching band, that type of thing. So if you're not qualified, if you don't feel comfortable or you don't feel that you are capable to teach a particular course or a particular area at the level of perfection or the level of standard that's required to adequately train your students, say so. Talk to your department chair, talk to your dean, because maybe they can shift some of those responsibilities to another faculty member in the department who is more qualified to teach. It's not saying you're any less of a person as a professor, but it's saying that you want your students to have the best opportunity possible to pass those courses. I'm not a theory teacher. Yes, I can do theory, but it's like a mathematics person that can do math but can't teach it. If I taught theory 3 and 4, a lot of the times my students will be as strong as I am in theory 3 and 4, and that's not going to do them justice, because the theory teacher should be preparing them not only to analyze music, but being able to prepare to write music as well when they move into orchestration and composition classes. And if you're not in a position to do that, then we need, ask your department chair to find someone who is, because teaching classes that you're not qualified for, you have the added stress of trying to learn as you go and learning as you're teaching the students. And that type of stress is going to show. It's going to show the level of incompetence if you don't have it. It's going to create the worry. And then it's going to also create, well, you told me you could do this. That creates tension within your department, with other professors. It creates tension with your supervisor. And that tension turns into stress. And it turns into burnout, or it turns into resentment for that particular position. So just don't be afraid to be honest with yourself about your level of qualifications and what you can and cannot do. So Professor Sanders, can you share your experiences, work with some of your colleagues, some things that you may have experienced as far as stress and burnout?
Yes, I sure can. Especially with some of our senior faculty, we've had some problems with them just adapting to the experience of being online, period. Because they're used to being face-to-face all these years. And then now, some of them don't even know how to do basic functions on the computer, less enough to worry about Blackboard, Canvas, or whatever program the university is using. Thinking of various ways to teach online has always been a problem, because especially some of the, I hate to always just say it's senior faculty, but you do have some younger faculty, I call them junior faculty, who've been on less than 5 years. They've just done it the way that their teacher did it, because they have no other experience of doing it. So they have a hard time of trying to think, I call it outside the box, of various ways of teaching online. Also thinking of various ways to keep your students safe. You have to teach them about things, not only personally, but things online. I use it and put it, and I actually just incorporated it this year with all of my syllabus about netiquette. You know, first of all, you need to look the part when you get online. Don't, you've already heard about the man that was online that was doing some other activities while he was on his Zoom call. Or you have students who are dressed and adorned from the waist up, and then they're just bare naked on the bottom. Or you've seen it on YouTube or Instagram about parents being in the background naked, or smoking weed, or drinking behind their children taking classes. So you have different things of that nature. Thinking of various ways of keeping themselves safe. They don't know how to take care of themselves, in various situations. Dealing with, we have a lot of faculty, especially those who have never, for my experience in the HBCU world, of just dealing with students who have difficulties coping, period. So of knowing that, having to deal with family issues like sickness, death, financial issues. I had a student just this past week who has lost his other parent amidst this semester from COVID. And he is one of 3 children. So just having to be he's the eldest, but having to be the person to keep the family together. So having to deal with that. You have faculty taking on too many responsibilities, as you said before. First of all, sometimes because they're not qualified, and sometimes they may be qualified, but it's just overwhelming to them and they don't know how to adapt. And also speak out to say, no, I can't do this, or no, I can't cope with this, or to ask any colleagues for any assistance, because it's almost showing a sign of weakness or embarrassment that they don't know how, or they can't cope with dealing with that. Not having some faculty don't have an outlet of their own. I know I don't want to take what Professor Stevenson had told us on Wednesday. She may speak on that, but just having persons that just can't, they don't have any kind of outlet, to speak. Like for me, this past spring semester, I can say what I've done while we were online at home is that I had recess online during lunchtime. So that was the time to talk to people, because all I saw was the 4 walls and the video screen, the monitor. So you have to deal with that. You got students, having students weigh all of their challenges on them, but then they have no outlet to weigh challenges on either, seeking any kind of therapy, or really even speaking to any good friends about something. I have I have good friends that I know that I can call at 2 o'clock in the morning. Look, this week was bad. You know, I've already had, you know, to me, and I say this, I think Zoom is like a cuss word, a 4-letter cuss word, because we do it every day. I am tired of seeing Zoom. I am zoomed out. I am Zoom. Zoom is like the word damn or darn. It's just, it's like that. It's one of those situations. Professors giving students more than they would in the classroom. Why would you give a student so many things and they don't have the capabilities? Like I had a faculty, I have some colleagues that don't even have internet and computers themselves. And I said, well, the university gave you a chance to get a computer and a hotspot for yourself. So why are you, you know, and then you hard on these kids, you giving so much classwork that you know you would have never given them if you were doing it face to face. Faculty are not sensitive to students' backgrounds. I said that before. Actually, you got some faculty that are burnt out, period, of just teaching. And then with the COVID, that just is another huge factor. They're just totally burned out and they just turn off. And then lastly, I have, you don't want to, they don't want to learn the technology to assist them in teaching. And I have to say to some of my colleagues in the band world, I don't see how you are still having band practice for 6 hours when you have no football game. You know, I understand learning music and different concepts. You know, here we were able to have band camp, but you still do things and you can have things in a reasonable amount of time. Learn how to work smarter and not harder. Send the kids the field show, you know, do it with Poware versus you trying to do the old school about a piece of paper, or, you know, teach them how to, you know, to arrange some pieces or do some things and think out of the box. But you have colleagues that are, you know, they still outside, you know, it's like 9 o'clock. Wait a minute, what are you doing at 9 o'clock with no game, you know? Or you hear them in the neighborhood, what are they doing? What are they doing? So those are some of the things I did with some of the colleagues, not just across the country.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Professor Stevenson, would you like to add anything to that, time of experiences that you've had with any of your colleagues or things that you experienced just with their burnout?
Okay. Well, sorry, I didn't get a chance to speak about a couple of things I wanted to kind of say. And that is, one of the things I think we do a disservice with our students when they come to the schools, and we do not give them the total plan of how to graduate. So I think that every institution should have that 4-year plan for that major laid out on that's accessible on the website. So they know if they take these classes, then this is your plan towards graduation. And then they don't come in it doesn't come as a surprise. In 4 years, you're not about to graduate because you see you still have 8 classes left. You know, so that's one of the things. And we were talking earlier about the students with having disabilities. And I think Professor Sanders said that about having disabilities. And I know we have what they call it, the abilities office. So the students are supposed to bring to you, anytime they have any kind of disability or ability, they're supposed to bring you a form and let you know, I am the student, I need extra test time, or I can't do virtual, because I did have a student, once we went to internet, she said this is her worst fear. She can't learn like this, you know, and it was due to having been in the military. She doesn't know what happened. All she knows is that they were practicing with the rubber bullets and she woke up in the hospital. You know, so now she has migraines and recurring and forgetfulness and all this other stuff that the military does not quite own up to. But what I'm saying is that it is important for us to know what the abilities are for the students. And one of the things I tell my students is that, you know, math teachers and science teachers at a university level are not always teachers. They're mathematicians and scientists. It's the same thing with music. Your history teacher may not be a teacher. Your history teacher is probably a historian or an ethnomusicologist, or your theory teacher is a composer or a theorist. When my theory teacher told me that he only had one way to explain, he had one way to do it. If they don't get it, they don't get it. And I told the chair at that time, I said, we need to do workshops for our faculty who are not teachers, they didn't take all the ed classes that we all had to take. So they don't know how to teach for diverse learners. They don't know anything about that. So I think that would help us if we can think of those plans. And you were also talking about this, having these 5 hours of rehearsal. And I thought about it, if you're going to graduate, there's no way you can graduate with music degree without taking about 16 credit hours a semester. Is that correct, right? Most schools tell you that for every credit hour, you need maybe 2 hours or 3 hours worth of practice time. So if it's only 2 hours, then the 2 hours plus the 16 hours in the class, that's already 48 hours. So if you're holding them for band rehearsal for 5 hours a day, 6 days a week, you've added 30 more hours. That's 78 hours. When do they sleep? When do they study? In the end, yeah, we have a great ensemble, but you've killed the individual and you've ruined that child's chance of graduating. So I just wanted to put that out there because I missed that, adding that part. But when it comes down to the whole tenure process, one of the things that I've seen teachers break down and cry and all of that stuff for just not having clarity. You need to know before you take the job, what do they want you to do? What do you have to do in order to be tenured? It should not be a moving target that you can't be. It should, if this is the target, you should be able to get that target. And don't want that job so much that it kills you. Be flexible. Be able to walk away from a job. And before I went to the university, I had one of the largest high school marching bands in Chicago. And the new principal, he was a pain in the gluteus, right? That's my cuss word. And he told me, my assistant was my friend. I got him over to the school and everything. And he said, I'm Stevenson, I'm just gonna get Mr. Mo and let him be the band director. And I said, you know what? I'll quit this job. I don't have an alliance to Dunbar. I have an alliance to teaching. I'll go somewhere else. And he said, see, I would get rid of you, but I'm scared to see you on the other side of the field, But it was just that whole thing that you're going to punk me. I don't care about this job. And I said, I'll walk out this job before I lose my best friend, And so that kind of changed, that flipped the tables. But even to know that being at the university level, it becomes prestigious. People think it's prestigious, but we don't exist without the high school teachers. We don't exist without the middle school band directors and stuff. So if you get that job at the university level and it doesn't fit you, be able to walk away from it. And that does not make you a failure. That makes you smart. So, but with us, one of the things I said is you want to be accurate, find out exactly what you have to do. Do you need a PhD to be tenured in that process? Is it going to take you 6 years to do it? What do you have to do to get promoted, to full professor? Know that, and you should have what we have, it's called a department application criteria. So there's a list that tells you the kinds of things that you should have done. Do you have to write and do research? And our thing as a performer, if you're the conductor of the band or you're the principal clarinet player, it's more important that you're doing that than it is that you're writing about doing it. So we explained it to our history teacher who thought that everybody should write a book, that, you would have nothing to write about if we did not exist. If that musician did not exist, what are the music history teachers writing about? So make that plain to your university so that they will respect. When you go to those meetings and you all talk about your application criteria, make them respect that performance side. Make them respect that you are the adjudicator. That's just as important as you writing an article. The fact that you are the person that judged for the state, that the competition. So you save everything that you've done, everything that has your name on it. If it doesn't have your name on it, slip your name in there and make sure that you keep all of that and keep together your portfolio so that you will have record of everything that you've done and find out how to fit it in. So write for friends, help friends, talk with friends, and go and volunteer at the high school, at the elementary school, and do some things with them so that you can put that as a part of what you've done for your university. And I think that was what you were asking me about, right? And tenure process, post-tenure review. Does your school have a post-tenure review process? Our school is, we have a union. So you can't just fire a teacher because you don't like them. It doesn't work like that here. You have to build a case. So while they're building your case, you have to build your own case as this is who I am and these are the things that I've done, so that it's not personal. You know, you've done all that you had to do to be tenured at that university. And that in itself will lower your stress level. And I like what Tomisha said Professor Brock said, to make sure that you tell them no when it's something that is overwhelming to you. And then when sometimes things are overwhelming to you, tell your students. In 2016, the governor we had tried to shut down the public school systems. And, you know, so a lot of us ended up teaching. I had to teach music history 1. I was like, you've got to be kidding. That's the only thing I told you all I would not teach, you know? But I told the students, I said, okay, we were all overworked. I would do it for 1 semester. I told them, I'm 2 chapters ahead of you. If you don't keep up, I'm going to be mad because I'm already stressed. So I let them know that I was stressed and they were stressed. And I said, it's going to be hard because I'm not a historian, so I don't know what to leave out. So we're going to learn everything, and it was still grout. So you all remember grout. So, you know, I let them know that, hey, this stresses me out. You know, 9:30 in the morning class stresses me out when I get out at 10 o'clock at night. You know, so if you're not there at 9:30, I think you're getting more sleep than I'm getting, and I'm mad. So be on time for my class. You know, so just be honest with them like that, you know, and be fair across the board. And it'll help you and it'll help them. So.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I also feel that it's important before we move on to the next section is to talk about secondary traumatic stress. A lot of the times, you know, we've talked about listening to our students, assessing our students' problems, and we've talked about tenure and the stress of burnout and being overwhelmed with the number of responsibilities we have. But oftentimes we don't consider that taking on our students' stress or taking on the stress of a colleague and listening to them, being, you know, that counselor for them can cause secondary traumatic stress with us. We tend to house and share their grief. When a student loses a loved one, when a faculty member loses their home or loses a job, or, you know, when a student has to leave school because they can't afford it, we take on that stress and trauma as well, and we grieve with that student. That compiled with our own stresses, our own natural stresses, our family stresses, can be overwhelming and can lead to burnout as well. So secondary traumatic stress syndrome, we often talk about post-traumatic stress syndrome, you know, things coming from a traumatic event in our life, but we don't often take into account that students and faculty alike, we tend to take on the stress of others, be it a roommate, be it a significant other we're in a relationship with, or, you know, just, it's just so much, you know, that we don't take into account that their sorrows become our sorrows, and it tends to have an effect on us physically and mentally and emotionally as well. So those are some things that I want you to think about. We've talked about our students, how to identify triggers when there may be mental health crises. We've also talked about our faculty and administrators. Dr. Williams, is there anything else that we left out as it relates to triggers or stress before we talk about coping strategies?
Nope, I think we've covered it.
Okay.
The majority of it.
Okay, well, starting with you, and for our participants, feel free to chime in the chat if you like, but think about coping and think about this pandemic. Think about COVID. What are some things, what are your current coping strategies? What do you do to cope with stress? What do you do to kind of deprogram from the week? Or what do you do when you feel like you're backed into a corner? Just, you know, feel free to share with us, you know, some of your coping strategies. And, you know, of course, you know, we know that there are healthy strategies and there are not so healthy strategies. I know Professor Stevenson, she talked about it, but she didn't want to mention it in detail, but I will mention it because we have to address it. Like Professor Smith said on Wednesday, if you don't name it, you can't tame it. So we have to talk about the fact that our students use drugs, alcohol, and even sex addiction sometimes to deal with their stress. They're moving from partner to partner, not because they're just openly promiscuous, but it's because that is their outlet for dealing with stress. And a lot of the times that may be just amplifying maybe some type of abuse that they've endured prior to coming to college. And so the only way they know to deal with their stress is to be addicted to sex, or is to drink more, is to smoke. So I just think, you know, as we're looking at coping strategies, think about some of the things you do now to cope with stress. I know me, I'll just get in my car with a full tank of gas and drive until I get to empty. Then I'll sit there and relax, fill up, and drive home, just to get out and just to get away from things sometimes. You know, I'll play my instrument, or sometimes I'll play video games. I'm gonna be honest with you. Sometimes that is a way to de-stress and deprogram. But just think about some of the things that you do. And Dr. Williams, if you can talk to us a little bit about coping strategies, what can we do to get rid of this stress and anxiety and depression?
I think if you're experiencing any mental health issue, to one, get professional help if you need it. It doesn't make you crazy, as I hear, and I put that in air quotes because there is a huge stigma around mental health, and I touched on this earlier in this webinar. Get physical, you know, beef up your exercise regimen, connect with others, help others, do something for someone else. Developing those coping skills. One of the things that I do to combat the stress in my life, not only during this pandemic, but it started about a year or so ago, I take 30 minutes for myself every single day. I am not anyone's mother, fiance, daughter, sister, auntie, none of that. I am Dr. Williams. Well, actually, I'm Misha in that moment. And, and it's all about me. So if I want to paint my nails, if I want to watch the paint dry on my walls, if I want to redo my closet, those 30 minutes are for me. And it came with consistency because I was always the one that would help everybody else. And I had to sit down and say, well, who helps the helper? And so that's when I created the 30 minutes for myself. Now, sometimes it take an hour and then, you know, my family come knocking on the door at the 30-minute mark, like it's over. But I take it every single day. And that is when I was able to just start feeling better. And even though I may have a stressful day, knowing that I'm going to have that 30 minutes alone helps me get through that.
Thank you. Professor Smith, would you like to add to that things we can do to just cope and just, you know, get past this stress, anxiety, or depression?
So I think everybody needs to come up with their own coping plan, because all of ours are different. Oprah said some years ago that it's not about being an artist with a capital A, it's about just being an artist. It might be that you mess around with paints, it's not to produce anything you can sell, but it just makes you feel good, feeds your soul. I tapped into gardening. Now, if y'all go out to my garden right now, I got stuff that don't even go together, but it just feels good to watch it grow and know it came, you know, from me. So I didn't know that was that's something that I do that helps me meditate. So just think about, I just ask you to be open and give something a shot, and you'll be surprised if it sticks. Think about it. Think about all the money was made off of paint and sip. And, you know, why didn't it ever occur to you to pick up a canvas and paint for yourself? But I think it's just outlets like that to teach us that, hey, there might be more to this than, just coming to this paint and sip. So identify accountability partner. I know I'm one of those people that need that. If I know nobody's looking for me at the gym, nobody's sending for me, I'm not coming. So, but if I know somebody's waiting for me, I'm real social. So I'll go just to meet with that person, and hey, I get the benefit of working out at the same time. Be able to reach out, schedule time with people, you guys. I'm guilty of this too. It's like, hey, we're going to get together. We need to get together. Da, 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 da. I think if one thing this pandemic has taught us is that you need to value that time with people, you know? So just be intentional about getting together and put it in your calendar. Be open to yoga. Who would have thunk? But I get in there and start stretching. Some of those poses I cannot stand, but that's another place that I find myself meditating. Find your self-care. Some of my clients like bubble baths. Some people like scented candles. You know, so pay attention to who you surround yourself with also. My grandparents are from rural Virginia, and one thing they used to say is birds of a feather flock together. So if you have a whole bunch of negative Nellies around you, I think you might be a negative Nelly. So, I mean, you know, just put people into your life that are gonna pour into your soul and not just take. Like really take inventory on who deposits into me, and then who just only makes withdrawals. Let me see. And just, you know, a lot of times we focus on how we look and how our hair is and what we wear. But what do your insides look like? So just, you know, think about that. Are you working on your insides? And I was just gonna leave with like schedule time for self-care. Dr. Brock said it. No, I'm sorry. Dr. Brock's probably gonna say it. I'm thinking about Wednesday. But in my planner, I'll put in there for the month when I'm paying those bills and when I have all these appointments that are in my book, then I put something in there for self-care and I put it in my color like purple to let me know this is what we're gonna do for me. You know, so you just make sure that you're replenishing your cup, because all of us, again, I think all of us are in our own ministry, but how fraudulent are you to tell these students to take time for themselves and replenish themselves, and your cup is empty and you're burnt out as well? They're probably mimicking what they see you doing. So just none of us need to be fraudulent.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Very profound words indeed. It is also important to reevaluate your goals and recommit to yourself. Find your why again. Why are you doing this? Why are you in school? Why are you teaching? And, you know, find that love that you once had. Many of us, we've been teaching for a while, and when you get to the point, you know, one thing I love about being a band director is I never feel like I'm at work. But whenever I get to the point that I feel like is work, or that I feel like I'm forced to do this, that's when I have to reevaluate my why. You know, document everything, you know, of course, that's going back to the other part of the conversation, but evaluate your why and reassess your goals. I remember on Wednesday, I mentioned that I would put a picture of my house or a car that I wanted on my refrigerator so that I knew every day what I was getting up and working towards. And I felt that if I was working towards a goal, it would, you know, it would make more sense to me. And I would still have a love for my job and a love for, you know, going for that reward. But also, like Dr. Williams and Professor Smith said about scheduling time for yourself, I would even say make a date with yourself. Make a date, schedule an appointment in your calendar, in your Apple Watch, or whatever it is, with your middle name. Okay, a lot of us, we hear our first names all the time, or if you're in my instance, is mom. You know, I don't think I have a first name anymore. I think it's just mom now. But make an appointment with your middle name. Why? Because you're going to give yourself so much more attention, and you're going to treat yourself with the same respect and attention that you do your students and your clients. And if you don't have a middle name, like I told some of the students on the call on Wednesday, use your line name or make up a name. Use your alter ego, that name that you are when you're in your shower and you're just, you know, you're just going out and you're just having a good time. Use your alter ego name, but set aside a time either every day or 3 days a week to have a date with yourself with your middle name, and make sure you keep that appointment. You're not going to let anyone take your time, because you wouldn't let anyone miss the appointment you have with your supervisor. You wouldn't let anyone make you miss an appointment you have with a client. So why would you allow someone to make you miss your appointment with yourself or with your middle name or your alter ego? Another thing I came across is just making sure that you treat each day, measure the small accomplishments. Each small accomplishment, you know, it's like a band director said to me one time, you know, of course they said it in a negative manner. Of course they said, you know, if you sweep up a little pebble, eventually you're going to get a whole pile of dirt, you know, so that's saying, you know, you don't want to have like little mistakes, because them little mistakes add up. But I would say this, start with one little accomplishment, because each little accomplishment you add is going to turn into a big bag of accomplishments. So every day when you get up, start your day by making your bed. Make your bed up. That's an accomplishment. You've accomplished the task of being able to come home to a made-up bed, a cool bed. So no matter what type of day you've had, good, bad, or indifferent, you know that you're coming home and you can smile because you accomplished something for that day. You're getting into a freshly made bed. That should make you feel good about yourself. But seeing yourself have that one accomplishment prompts you and motivates you to have another accomplishment. I'm going to fold those clothes now. Then it has another accomplishment. I'm going to clean the bathroom. Then another accomplishment. I might wash my car. And so before you realize, you've had more accomplishments than failures for that day. And even if something doesn't go as planned, you can always get up and try it again the next day. So I would encourage you to do that. Professor Stevenson, what are some things that you would suggest for our music students and faculty? How can we cope?
One of the things I think that is good for you to just check on other people, you know, just, I said this a long time ago, they said, well, you know, for your birthday, how people may forget your birthday and everything. But I made it a point to buy things for other people on my birthday. And then next thing you know, people stop forgetting your birthday, you know, but it's just, but that wasn't the intent, is that, you know, let me just not focus on me and focus on other things. So one of the things is when you kind of like take everything out of just you in your world, then it gives you a chance to focus on some other things. Reach out to your friends, you know, reach out to the friends that you used to have, call them, check on them, and be flexible about your goals. I think that's really important because we expect people who are 18 years old to know what they want to do with the rest of their lives, and they don't, you know, and most people do not have an idea. So be flexible to change your goals. Well, man, this is not working, and it's okay. And just make it okay for yourself to make changes. When it comes down to the anxiety for taking the Praxis test and all of that, I tell my students, take tests, take them often. Don't wait till the last minute and take the test right before. Take the test a year or two early so you know what you don't know. And I tell them, my big coping skill with the music part for the exam, I tell my students, when you go in to take that test, when you walk out, you sit in your car, do not talk to anybody, don't drive off or anything. Write down everything you thought you saw, whether it was a part of the question or a part of the answer, because they're only going to make so many tests. And this time, the answer is A. The next time, the answer is going to be B, or whatever the question might change. But put all of that down so that you'll know what to go back to study for. Now you have a plan, and you fail it. Okay, when you take it the second time, add more stuff to your list until eventually you're going to pass that test. You know, and don't be so afraid, embarrassed that you failed it. That if 4 or 5 people that failed it did the same thing and they come together, they might have the entire test of questions, you know, between the 4 of them. If you had 20, we have 80 different things that we've talked about. So I try to tell them that. And one of the personal things, you talk about bubble baths and everything, I call it my shower preacher. I said this the other day, you know, so I put my AirPods in, jump in the shower and listen to my favorite preacher. And sometimes my favorite preacher changes, you know, based on my mood. If I'm not feeling, I'm kind of like a little down on things, and I don't want to hear about the racial riots today, you know, I don't want to hear that. But I just can say, even going through a divorce, I got through a divorce listening to 2 things. Joyce Myers, it was at the time, and Def Comedy Jam. So if you know anything about Def Comedy Jam, they cussed the entire time. And I used to work for Bernie Mac. So, you know, and he was funnier in person than he was, you know. But I listened to the preacher because that kept me inspired. And I listened to the comedy people because it kept me laughing. You know, so don't be so strict, you know, that you can't laugh. You know, laugh at yourself when you screw up and stuff like that. And it just makes a difference. And so those are, to me, a lot of the coping mechanisms for getting through life. And then my best thing that I do for myself, because I am not all that expressive emotionally, I'm not going to tell you that I don't feel good today. You're not going to even know about that. But I try to write things down. And once I write things down and I have a plan, then I can sleep, you know. Otherwise, I'm up all night rehearsing it. But it frees my mind to be able to focus on something else because I've already worked out my plan to get through this recording or get through this album or this music I have to write or something. So that's what I do.
Thank you so much. And I think you've said some very profound things there. Yes, we have to be okay with laughing at ourselves and not taking things so seriously. I know I had a hard time just being serious all the time and just learning to laugh, you know, and a lot of times you know, you need that. It's okay to make a mistake. We're human. You know, we're human. You're going to make mistakes. We're not going to be perfect all the time. We're, you know, no matter how prepared we're going to be, something is going to go wrong at some point, whether it's in a performance or not. I'll never forget, you know, my first time, you know, banner at the Elizabeth City State University, went up to Virginia State University, my alma mater. We had a great show on the field. I come down off the ladder and tripped off of the ladder. I'm like, you know, I had to laugh it off, but, you know, you gotta, you know, you have to really be willing to laugh at yourself and not take things to heart, because that can add to stress as well if you're always overly critical and always feel like you have to be perfect. So thank you. Professor Sanders, would you like to give any final words on just things that we can do to cope with stress, anxiety, or depression?
Yes, I do one thing every Wednesday. I call it Wellness Wednesday, and I check up on somebody. We've been talking about it all evening about, you know, checking up on our friends or loved ones that we haven't talked to in a while. Just last night, I had a Zoom call with some of my classmates from in the band from undergraduate school. And we just kiki for about an hour and 42 minutes, as a matter of fact, just old memories about teachers, each other, and also we had one of our members that's from New Orleans, so just to check up on her to see how she's dealing with the hurricane. But it was just good just to see the faces and to just talk to them and see how they're doing. One thing that some of my friends always tell me that I'm very positive, and I am, because I think that makes me get through the day. As I say every morning, for all my friends on Facebook, I say it all the time, every day, that I am so glad I made roll call. I am present, and I have made roll call for the day. And if we celebrate a birthday, we have perfect attendance. So I am proud to say that I have 50 years of perfect attendance. So you just have to stay positive in any and everything you do. Sometimes we get the satisfaction when we help others. It makes us feel good. So when you do things for others, sometimes it makes you feel good in the process. I wanted to piggyback off on Professor Stevenson about creating joy and satisfaction for yourself. She talks about, she listens to Def Comedy Jam and listens to different, you know, pastors and preachers across the country. Well, I do two things. I told the students on Wednesday what I do, and this is the worst one. Let me not say that, because then that's a wrong opinion. But it's a controversial song that's out that I actually apparently love when I take a shower every morning, and it's WAP, and I love WAP. So doing WAP, I will WAP myself in the shower, and on my drive to school, my students, I love to see what they listen to. And there's a group called Moonchild. I love them. If you haven't listened to Moonchild, I like listening to them. So I listen to them from in the car until I get into the music building every morning, which is 26 minutes. And so those two, you know, things help me out. Writing, some people write in a journal. Sometimes I forget the journal. I forget where I put the journal. So I just use my voice memo on my phone, and then just come back and listen to some things. What I told on Wednesday, and I'll tell everyone this evening, I use the app Insight Timer. I use that for meditation purposes, just to create, like Dr. Williams has said about creating 30 minutes for yourself. You can create any amount of time. What if you've got a class, or for some of the high school and middle school educators online, that you only have, you know, maybe 40 minutes. Hell, you can put 10 minutes of some meditation on, and that may just calm you down. You might have to do it. I love how everyone is talking about planning personal activities for themselves. I think for some people it's watching TV, video games. Thank God I live actually 3 minutes from the beach. And I love to sit in my car. Sometimes I'll bring my meal. I'll cook my meal, sit it, prepare them a little Tupperware, a little foil on my plate, you know, as we do, or back in the old days, saran wrap. We would saran wrap our things. And I'd love to just hear the sound of water and just to sit at the beach to calm myself down. One thing that we do have to say for all of us is that we can't set our goals so high that we can't attain them. Also, we put so many goals on ourselves that it's too many. I was telling the students on the Wednesday call, don't, you know, try for yourself, you know, put your plan. Don't, you know, you work your day. Don't let your day work you. So plan out everything what you're doing every hour of the minute. And even put your personal stuff on there. Even just like earlier we said, some things may take 30 minutes, they may go into maybe an hour, but that's okay. It's okay. You can't get everything accomplished. I love how Dr. Brock says, sometimes I don't get a lot of things accomplished, but I did accomplish some things for that day. So actually doing that, and just love yourself. You know, you can't love others if you can't love yourself. And sometimes it is hard, especially in this pandemic of being by yourself, or if you have people who are single, it's sometimes a problem for people, but find outlets that are good for you so you can love on yourself. And then if you need to love on others, love on a pet, you know, and just try to make it through this pandemic period. Those are my points.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We're getting ready to take some questions in a few moments, but I would like to direct your attention to the chat. Professor Smith has placed some links in the chat that may be beneficial to you. The Insight Timer that Professor Sanders mentioned, the Calm app, and a YouTube video with some relaxing nature sounds. So I'm definitely going to make use of those in a moment. Before we take our questions, I would like to acknowledge and just give a shout out and representation for the organization we're also representing today. Professor Roxanne Stevenson and Professor Sanders are representing Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Professor Smith and Dr. Williams are representing Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And I am representing Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated. So we didn't get a chance to give a shout out on Wednesday, but we definitely want to recognize our organization as well. And
any TBS on here?
Yeah, well, Tau Beta Sigma, and Professor Sanders, you're Tau Beta Sigma as well. And I'm sure, you know, some of our participants, if you're in any organizations, feel free to shout those out in the chat. But we definitely want to pay homage to our organizations as well. And just, you know, really, you know, encourage the members of those organizations or whatever you're a part of as well. Today we covered a wealth of information. So I would like to give an opportunity for our participants. If you have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question. We'll take a few moments and answer any questions that you may have. I know that in the chat, Ms. Haskins was mentioning that some of her students at Hillside High School are burnt out because professors are giving them way more work than they would in person. And Professor Sanders, I know you touched on that. And then she mentioned that in band, she has decreased the practices to 3 practices a week, and they can't make some of those because of the workload from other classes. That is our story, middle school, high school, and different. We've had to alter what we do to kind of, you know, allow our students to be the nurturing ear for our students. Because they're just overwhelming the other classes. I know my practices have went down to 2 days a week. 1 day a week is full rehearsal. The second day of the week is just sectionals. And if they just have a lot of work to do, then I understand, long as they're working at some point to be on target with what we're asking them to do. But it is difficult. Anyone else, would you like to chime in, or if you have any questions, or if you're uncomfortable unmuting yourself, feel comfortable putting it in the chat. I have to say that because I do have students that are uncomfortable turning cameras on and unmuting themselves, and so I allow them that flexibility to communicate and participate in class through the chat, and I find that that's very helpful. But if there are no questions, we'll move to, Dr. Little, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just had one question for Dr. Williams and Dr. Smith. Mm-hmm. What would be your suggestions to open students up to actually talking about what they may be dealing with from the standpoint of stress? Of course, as we know, our students are very resilient to the fact, or, you know, kind of exclusive to the fact of what they may be going through individually, and they just don't want to open up. And, you know, to their band directors, or in my particular situation, they want to seem as though they don't have any problems and things of that nature. So what would be your suggestions to help students open up and actually shed light on their problems? Because, you know, you can't help them if they don't come to the table and kind of shed light on what it is they're going through. So any suggestions in that regard?
I would say, Dr. Little, just having that open door policy to let them know that it's not an issue, and that, you know, if they do share that information with you, it won't spill over or spill back. A lot of times it's just the fear of that information getting out. And the other thing is, like, anytime you see an opening to educate, you know, small amounts of education, I think, you know how sometimes you're speaking to the group, but then you'll see somebody double back. And that thing hit them in a personal way. So first of all, I want to thank you. And if I'm missing anybody, I saw Mr. Connor. I want to thank the males in the on the chat. I mean, on this webinar, because you know, as society, I was saying this on the last on Wednesday, is that as society, we kind of, you know, tell men we really don't want to hear from them. You know, and I use the example of a little girl and a little boy skinning their knee. We really talk to the little girl and encourage her. You know, what happened to the food? Are you still bleeding? Yeah. We encourage her to talk. A lot of times with those guys, if we send the message, whether direct or indirect, nobody wants to hear from you. Don't come across as a sissy, you know, man up. But think about how that will culminate into them being a teenager and then having grief or loss. That young lady usually will reach out because she doesn't feel as much of that stigma. I'm not saying there's not stigma there, but she doesn't feel as much. When that guy, you know, when you ask him, you know, what's up with you? I heard you had a loss or experienced a loss. You usually get nothing. I'm all right. You know, spit, you know, or whatever. So, so as much as you can, Dr. Little, you know, just opportunities to dispel those myths and those stigmas. I think that would help, you know, kind of prime the atmosphere for, you know, if there is something going on, I'm open and I'm here and I'm willing, you know, when I get your information, I'm going to treat it with confidence and not share that. And one more thing that I wanted to add about the stigma, you guys, the Tuskegee study. People are scared to death of medication, of, you know, I mean, they're scared. They're scared of government. They're scared of the hospitals because our government hasn't done people the right way in the past, you know, and specifically different communities, they haven't done well by them. So I'm sure Dr. Williams can speak to this as well. I tend to let people know, look, I'm not a pill popper, a pill pusher, you know. I'll tell some of my youth that are on medication and they're saying, look, I don't want to be on this. This makes me feel this way and that way. I'll tell them, okay, then I might have a plan to help get you off, but we're going to have to manage that mental health. And then I'll advocate for you to get off that medication. So, yeah, Dr. Little, I'm praying for you. You have us there as resources, but those are my two things. Is just have you know, let them know that you're sensitive to the plight, and that if they share the information with you, it won't go anywhere. You know, it's just between you and them. And I think you're going to see people knock on your door a little bit more. Dr. Williams?
Yeah. And in addition to what Professor Smith is saying around, you know, having the conversation, being welcoming, I would say add these conversations into your lessons. A lot of the times we shy away from mental health, even though we see obvious sign that someone may be in distress, or there's a distressing time, there's some anxiety, there may be some depression and obvious changes in behavior. Have these conversations and let them know that it's okay. One of the things that I looked for when I was in school is I wanted to be able to trust the individual that was giving me information that I should know. And a lot of times I didn't, mainly because they didn't look like me. Most of them didn't look like me. But even when they did look like me, I didn't trust them because I just felt like they weren't having the conversations or even knowledgeable about the plight that I was experiencing as a student, as a human. in that institution. So definitely have those conversations and be direct. We didn't talk about it today, but we did Wednesday, being very direct about suicide, asking the questions, are you feeling like killing yourself? And if you are feeling like killing yourself, what would you do? I need details. How likely are you to do these things? Do you have access to guns or things that would be harmful? So those are some of my suggestions, Dr. Little.
Thank you.
Thank
go
you
ahead.
all. No, I'm sorry. Thank you all deeply for the feedback, especially to Professor Sanders and Professor Stevenson as well. I did see your comments. And, you know, we do have that open door policy, but you hit the nail right on the head, you know, in regards from a man-to-man perspective. I mean, we just grow up feeling as though we should not share our feelings. And so it's really harder for me more so to reach out to my young man, because, you know, the young ladies, they do come and say, hey, Dr. Little, I may be dealing with this, but guys, you know, it's, oh, I'm good, Dr. Little, or, you know, nothing is going on, Dr. Little, you know, because they want to put on that face as if, you know, they're strong, and which they are, but I'm really just having a hard time with getting them to open up in that vein and getting them to understand that men can open up as well and talk about their feelings. You know, they deal with things as well. And so I'm really trying to create that breakthrough for our students before, you know, they go into a situation where they just hurt themselves. And I really can't deal with that on my conscience, especially, and this is one thing too that I want to ask, with a program as large as mine, I want to connect with everybody, but I just can't. So, you know, anybody on the call, if you have any suggestions when it comes to that, and Professor Sanders, I know you mentioned when bringing other people in, we're starting to do that now from the university, but I just want to reach all the students and I really can't. So, you know, any feedback with that, about that?
Before Professor Sanders speaks, I would say do it on a large group, as a large group activity. Like, don't be afraid to talk about how you're feeling that day. I've had times where I went into some of my rehearsals and said, man, today was a long day today. You know, I'm just feeling overwhelmed, or I didn't feel like the last class went well. Or have you ever been sitting in a meeting where you just get irritated with everyone around you, and then you'll be surprised how many students talk about, yeah, because this student such and such and this teacher such and such. So they start to open up more. And I think having open group conversations and being able sometimes to talk about how your day went and the stresses of your day, as like at the beginning of band rehearsal, hey, how's everybody doing? Or, you know, hey, you know, I'm tired this week, or, you know, today I almost had to take a personal day. How about you? Or has anyone felt like you're just overwhelmed this week, or just you have too much on your plate this week? I know I ask that a lot of my students every day, or every Wednesday. I'll have that wellness check with my students and say, hey, how's everybody doing? How did your day go? And I'll ask as a group. And then that prompts a group discussion, because those who may not have felt comfortable about saying anything, when they hear people around them speaking, they'll start to say, oh yeah, me too, I felt that too. Or you'll get your amen corner going on, and to have more people that, when they can see that other people feel just like them and have went through the same things they went through that day alone, they'll be more apt to speak up. And then you'll start to see, like Dr. Williams said, and like Professor Smith said, you'll start to see more people now after practice stay back, kind of lingering back, and you wonder, why don't they just going on, but they really stand back to talk to you, say, hey man, I really need to talk to you. This is what happened to me today. Or they'll start talking openly about an issue they had, and that's your opportunity to help address it. Professor Sanders, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I put in a comment earlier, but about 4 years ago, I started seeing problems with students and mental health issues. And I know, Dr. Little, with your position, you have many students that you have to deal with. And that's why you have, if you have enough staff, that, you know, those individual persons can be able to go, because sometimes they may not be able to come to the director of bands, but they may be able to come to the assistant, or they may come to, you know, the J-Set coordinator, or, you know, they can be able to go to someone else. But I've even done this when I've had students who've come to my office. I've had to take them, you know, 4 years ago, we had the counseling center come to the band, to come to band rehearsal and just tell all of the resources that the students had. And I didn't even know all the services that the students had. And what I would do, especially for those students who did not, because you have students who can admit that they have a problem, but they have a problem going to the counseling center to just have a session. And so I would walk over there with them. And what I would do is in one of the rooms, they had the chair and the meditation, CD going, and I'd sit up there and look, be relaxed myself while they're in therapy themselves. So that's one thing to do. It's so hard. I'm glad you brought that up, especially with the gentlemen that are on the webinar this evening, is that it's hard for you all to have, because I have, it's so funny, one of my pedagogy classes, I have all males. And just to talk about the experiences of having to be that strong person. And, if you were brought up, you're not supposed to cry. You're supposed to suck up everything. You're supposed to protect your woman. You're supposed to protect your kids and do this. And you don't tell anybody that or they'll call you a punk or this, that, and the other. So that's kind of hard they have to have mentors that are sensitive enough to express that, so they can say, well, you know what, if he's talking about that, I'm having that same problem, I can feel comfortable to talk to you, because a lot of kids just have that challenge. I'll say the same thing for women, and I'll put that out there. We talked about this a little bit on Wednesday. We have a lot of girls that are in music education that I've had challenges over the years of, just because I'm a woman in a male-dominated field, it is stress to be looked over for a position because I'm a woman. And they won't talk about it when you are dealing with a lot of men. Oh, you don't deal with it, or you just a girlfriend, or you don't know that much about music. You don't know about instruments, or you don't know how to deal with the band program, or things of that nature. And you have women that are in your band program that don't get that attention either. So you have those challenges that will come up. And that's stress enough as it is. Or to be to work in a entirely different culture for anything. Like for myself, playing in the symphony, there are only 6 of us in the symphony. 6. So I'm not only representing myself, I'm representing my family, where I've gone to school. I have to work twice as hard as being a woman to prove that I can do the same thing as a man. Sometimes even better, but don't put that out there. But there are numerous challenges that people have to go into, or just say for men, having to deal with a woman that is an administrator that doesn't want a man to do a certain thing. So you have those different various challenges, and the students have that as well. But if you try to create an open sense of like I just say, your open door policy, as you say, you can be able to hit more students than you think. And like they say, if they say, oh, I'm okay, that they can be able to break those barriers down and to be able to be open to talk to you about things. I know Professor Stevenson, she got her hand up, she read it.
Indeed. Professor Stevenson, you want to chime in real quick, and then I know we have a few more questions in the chat.
Okay, I just want to make it really quick because Dr. Little, I probably, even as a female, I probably grew up more like you. So I don't, I'm not real emotional on a lot of stuff. So my students, I had to realize that I needed people around me, other people that work with me that counter my personality. Because for instance, I had a student that broke his middle finger. He's a great bass player. And he came in with this big splint on his finger. And I said, what you do to your finger? Okay, you're going to really have to work harder at those other fingers because you still have to do your gig. He still had a family to take care of. And he's like, it hurt, He said, you're not gonna empathize with me. I said, you better wait on the choir director. And she came right around the corner. She saw the same thing I saw. And she said, oh, Gerald. She gave him, he looked at me and put his head on her shoulder, right? So it became the joke. But my thing was, I said, so which one of us helped you? He said, you were right. I really had to work on using those other fingers because I had to do my gig. So I go into problem solving mode, and that's not always what people need. He said, well, I just needed to put my head on somebody's shoulder for a moment. And we laughed about it, but for me, it was a point taken. That sometimes I'm not the person you're going to come to because I'm coming with your solution. She came with a shoulder to cry on or whatever. So having multiple people that are empowered in your organization that, that they can go to, because you've got hundreds of kids. So you've got a whole lot of issues that you have to deal with, and to be okay with that and let them feel safe with it. So I wanted to tell you that it's not even just a guy thing. Some of us just grew up in that era that we were told that you don't put your feelings out there, you know. So,
Indeed. Indeed.
especially female, because that makes
Right.
you, you know, we're not free to speak and to be female, you know.
That's true. That's true. And I know before we get to Mr. Connor's question, I wanted to just add one quick thing to what Professor Sanders said, not only with women in the profession, but think about those females in our programs that try out for drum major, that try out for percussion captain, and they're often overlooked because of their gender and not because of their skills and qualities when they're probably the best person for the job. So I think going into this, and this will be for another webinar on my panelists, we might have to call on you again for this, but just talking about gender equality in our programs and how to look at that from a broader perspective and how to do a paradigm shift in all of our programs to really have more equality, and for the male who is a dynamic piccolo player, you know, just making sure that we're across the board on this. So that's something for a different time. But Mr. Connor asked, what are some social activities that your programs engage in throughout the academic year that can build up your students in various ways? So social activities, and we're not talking about card games and board games, everybody. So Professor Sanders, can you chime in and talk about maybe some bonding activities that can engage students? And this is probably ever so present now because of COVID, and our kids can't interact in a performance ensemble. We're all about social interaction. So what can we do?
I know everyone that is registered for band, you can give them a discussion, just like you give them some time. Look, what y'all want to talk about today? And then one just sparks off. Look, Professor so-and-so gave us all this homework. They talk about all the professors for that day just to get it out. Or I love it that they do here a lot, and they do a lot on Instagram, is the little challenge, and TikTok, you know, all of these little challenges. So I said, okay, man, y'all create a challenge for us. Let's do a challenge so we can put it out there on the internet. Be involved, you know, if you want to put some snippets and things out. I hate to say on our campus, which I am so thankful for, that our COVID numbers are like this. I am proud to say that we have only 19 cases on our campus, and it's because the kids can't go anywhere. So they are glad to be in band when they come for the little time for rehearsal, because when they go into the dorm, they can't go and see each other in the dorm. You can't go in each other's room, and you can't go visit anybody else on campus. So it kind of cuts the numbers down. And then you have a lot of professors who have just chosen, I do not want to go back in the classroom. So those things being on the internet, you know, as far as Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat, they do that, you know, we just suggest little challenges and things for themselves. Perfect example, homecoming is supposed to be pretty much these last couple of weeks. Let's have Spirit Week. We normally have Spirit Week for homecoming, leading up to homecoming. Okay, since Halloween is coming up, we had a day where everybody dresses like their favorite. You know, oh Lord, I was embarrassed when we had the favorite band director day. Lord have mercy, some folks that look like me. I said, oh my God. And you don't know how much these kids listen to you and talk and emulate you. We had a day where it was green and gold day. So they just wore faces painted, everything, just different things. So you have to create and just be creative on different things for the students, just to make it a social time for them if they choose or do not choose to be on you know, the social media aspects.
Thank you. I would like to also add too, do what we do. Allow your students to have a jam session. We tend to get lost in the fact sometimes that we're the band directors. We forget to let our students use their creative minds. We know we're going to warm up on the concert B-flat scale. Why not let them warm up in their own way or be social about it? Hey, drum line, give me a beat. Bass line, give me a bass line to this. All right, we're gonna warm up on our scales this way, change it up a little bit. Those social activities and the opportunity to create will spark so many bonds, because you'll find them walking around campus with instruments whenever we get back to that, being able to play and just have jam sessions amongst themselves. You'll find that they become family long after they've left your school or left your institution. I know, like I said, with my students now, years later, I left Elizabeth City in 2016, and my former students are still engaging with each other, having jam sessions virtually now, of course, but they play in each other's bands, go to each other's weddings, they do each other's birthday parties, bridal showers, you name it. And when we lose someone, like we just lost a student the other day, they all come together, they all bond together, they all pitch in and help the family. So these social activities not only help our students now, but can help them in the long run for many years to come. So have a jam session, let them create it. And of course, virtually now, you'll be surprised how many little gadgets they have on their cell phones and tablets. Have them do a virtual jam session. You have some poets in your program. I'm sure you have some rappers in your band program. You have some composers in your band program and arrangers. Have them just create some things to have a virtual jam session. Put a spin on it, you know, and I just think that engaging students in the art itself, I think that would be a great way to socially interact. Did anyone want to add to that very quickly before we do our wrap up for today? Any final words, panelists? All right, well, I want to thank you to everyone today for joining us today. I want to give a special shout out again to Dr. Lanisha Williams, Professor Latroyal Banks-Smith, Professor Roxanne Stevenson, and Professor Stephanie Sanders for hanging with me for 2 days to bring you this webinar on music education and mental health, addressing a growing crisis. If you would like to contact any of us, I'm asking all of my panelists to put your contact information in the chat box for everyone. And we encourage you to reach out to us. Let me grab the link right quick for our post webinar survey. We would like to encourage you to take our survey and let us know how we did. Let us know if you're interested in learning more about our topic or learning more about additional topics as well. We'll try our best to keep you posted on upcoming events that we may host. But we definitely want to thank you for your time and thank you just for taking, I know it's evening on the East Coast, so I definitely appreciate all of those who are here well past dinner time to join us today. This is the link to the survey, and I'm going to put my information in the chat as well.
Dr. Brock, I wanted to chime in and just say, I'm Miss Haskins, guys. It's a bad hair day, but I did want to say I thoroughly enjoyed this and appreciate all of your feedback. I'm definitely going to take those emails. I have 2 students who are seniors in the band program, and they're doing their final projects on mental health as it relates to students on their age level. So I hope they were in the call the other day. I did share this information with them, but they're definitely going to be reaching out to you all. And it was just an honor to know that they wanted to do a project related to my field. So thank you again for this.
Indeed, thank you. And we're going to, we did record this session, so if you would like to share this with anyone, this recording will be available sometime next week so that you can use it and share it in your programs. I definitely really appreciate all of you being on the call. And if you need anything, like I said, please feel free to fill out that survey. We will look forward to doing future events with you. Anything else, panelists? All right, if nothing, thank you again for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Have a great day. Stay safe.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Board, for joining us today. Okay, and ladies, as always, I'm going to save the chat and I'll be sending this, I'll be sending all of this data to you as well.
Okay.
And I think I sent you all the recording from the other day, but I'm going to send you today's recording too as soon as I can download it. So it'll be downloaded sometime tomorrow. Okay. But thank you from the bottom of my heart. If you could, when you get a chance, can you email me your mailing addresses so that I can send you your tokens of appreciation? Because I asked, but please, I do want to send you a token of appreciation just for your time. Man, I learned a whole lot today from you guys. You guys are very insightful. I think that a lot of people gain so much out of this. And I just appreciate you just taking a chance on me, taking a chance on this project and giving of your time. I know we're already overwhelmed and busy and zoomed out, but this was this was the best platform. Google Meets is just not conducive to doing something like that. But
it's horrible.
Yes, but I definitely